and go over our Okay, we have Proverbs 3:5. Let's say it. Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord
with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Proverbs 3:5.
Good. Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Awesome. Okay, so that's your memory scripture that you will have for your testimony.
I wrote it down.
Friday. You wrote it down? Okay, awesome. Awesome. All right, so let's get into our lesson. So we talked about Gideon this week. Remember, Gideon finally went to battle against the Midianites. But before he went to battle, when he hears that the Midianites joined forces with the Amalekites and other nations, Gideon prays and asks God for another confirmation just to be sure, because he was like, I'm not 100% sure if that's what the Lord wants me to do. So he throws out the fleece and he says, God, he does two different prayers about the fleece, and God answers both of them, confirming to Gideon that he was indeed the one that the Lord had chosen to go and lead Israel to victory over the Midianites. So Gideon prepares for battle. He calls out all the people in the land. He asks for all the men to show up, those who want to fight in battle, and 32,000 men show up. So whenever they go down to march to fight against the Midianites, the Lord speaks to Gideon and tells Gideon that that is too many men. Now, the problem is the Midianite army was like way more than the Israelite army. So Gideon's like, Lord, that's too many. He's like, if anything, we need more men, way more men, because they are like 3-4 times how much men we are. But the Lord knew what he was talking about. And so he told Gideon, he says, Gideon, that's too many men. So Gideon says, okay, Lord, well, what do you want me to do? So the Lord tells Gideon to tell the people, tell the men, whoever's scared, go home. So Gideon makes this announcement, not thinking he would lose 22,000 men. 22,000 men left whenever Gideon said, if you are fearful, go home. So he was left with only 10,000. He was only left with 10,000 men. So Gideon thinks, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna have to make it work with the 10,000. But then the Lord speaks to Gideon again and tells him that's still too many men.
And it actually is.
So it was still too many. And Gideon's like, Lord, we're even less than the Midianites, way less, 10 times almost less than them. And you're saying that it's too many men? And so the Lord tells him, whenever the men go to the river, have them drink and separate them into two groups. Those that drink like this, like, cupping the water to their mouth, and those that put their head down. And if you remember, the Lord had told him that because he says those that cup the water with their hands, they're still alert and able to watch what's going on. He says, but those that put their head down to drink like a dog, he says, they aren't alert. So they're not ready for battle. They're not ready to go to battle at all. So Gideon does this, and he separates the men into two groups, and he ends up with only 300 men left. So that is like way less than what he started with, of course, but of course less than the Midianites. But Gideon still trusted that God would give him the victory, because God had confirmed it to Gideon 3 times already. So he's like, Lord, if you said you're going to give us the victory, then that's what's going to happen. You're going to give us the victory. So Gideon wanted to go to battle, but he still wasn't sure. So the Lord told him to go and sneak in the camp of the Midianites, and he would hear some words, and those words would encourage him. So Gideon and his servant go out, and they sneak at night into the camps of the Midianites. They didn't even know Gideon was in their camp. And he hears 2 of the soldiers, the Midianite soldiers, speaking. And one of them tells the other, he says, I had a dream that a barley bread came tumbling down in our camp and flattened our tents. And the other man said, the other soldier says, oh, this means that the Lord is going to give the victory to Gideon, and that we will lose the battle. So Gideon overhears them talk about this, and this encourages him, because he's like, okay, this is the 4th confirmation, right, that the Lord has given me, telling me that we will win the battle. And so the Lord confirmed it 4 times to Gideon that they would have victory. So Gideon, when he hears this, he goes back, he gets his army, his 300 men, he gets them together, and they go and they march into the Midianite camp. But they didn't immediately go and attack and go to battle. They had a plan. They would divide into 3 groups. Each group would have 100 men. There will be 2 groups on the side, and there will be Gideon's group. They all had a trumpet, a torch with a clay jar with a burning torch on the inside of it. So when they would go, Gideon said, whenever me and my group start blowing the trumpet, you will blow with yours, and you will break the clay jar, right? So they get ready, and then all the Midianite soldiers are sleeping. They're asleep. They don't even know the enemy, who's the Israelites, because that is their enemy. They don't even know that they are there surrounding the camp. So immediately when Gideon and his group blow their trumpets, all of the other groups blow their trumpets. All of the Midianite soldiers wake up confused because they're like, what's going on? All they hear is a loud trumpet. They hear clay jars crashing. They see the light from the torch. They don't know what's going on. And they all wake up trying to hurry up and get together, confused. They get out of their tents and they're just swinging their swords, not even knowing they're slaying one another. They're killing one another, their own soldiers. They're slaying each other. And so they killed each other. Now, not all of them. Some of them did go to battle with the Israelites, but the Lord has still given them the victory anyway. So after this battle is complete, the Midianite army was completely destroyed after this. And so there will be no more problems from the Midianites for the Israelites. The Lord used Gideon, who thought he was not able to do anything. Remember, Gideon said, Lord, I'm nobody. I come from the least tribe. I'm the least in my family, Lord. Pick somebody else. No, God chose that man, Gideon, to be the one to defeat this strong Midianite army with only 300 men. So the Lord has given Gideon the victory. And remember, they shouted the sword of the Lord and Gideon. So I told you after this battle, Gideon judged Israel for 40 years. And of course, as usual, when a judge is over the land, everything is quiet, it's peace. They don't have trouble with their enemies. But as soon as Gideon dies, we know what the Israelites do. They turn their backs from God and they turn to idol worship. So because of that, the Lord raises up their enemies. And I told you after some time, the Lord raised up the Philistines, who began to rule and oppress God's people, the Israelites. But this was because they turned from God. So for 40 years, the Lord allowed the Philistines to rule over the people. Now, I told you it wasn't everybody, all the Israelites that had turned their backs on God. Some of them were still trying to serve God and do the right thing. And one of those was a man named Manoah and his wife. And they really wanted their people to turn their hearts back to God. They really wanted their people to serve God again. They really did. But unfortunately, the people, they were so stuck in their idolatry and in their sin, they completely have forgotten about what it even looked like to serve God. But the Lord saw Manoah and his wife, and he appears to Manoah's wife, and he tells her basically that she's going to have a son. He says, I will give you this child. You don't have children. Y'all have wanted children for so long, and the time has come now for your son. The Lord says your son will be special. He will be a Nazarite. You will not be able to cut his hair as he grows up, because this will be a sign that he is a Nazarite. His strength will be found in his hair. He says, when he is grown, he shall do the work of delivering the people of Israel from the Philistines. So this baby that the Lord would bless Manoah and his wife with would be the child that would free the people from the Philistines. But they had to wait till he became an adult, though. But he would be the one. And so the angel also instructs Manoah not to drink any strong drink, or not to eat any foods that God did not want them to eat until she had her baby. And so she tells her husband, the angel also speaks to him too, but she tells her husband, and they say, okay. And they believe that God will give them a son. And a year later, their son is born to them. Their son is born to them, and his name is Samson. That was their son. So that's what we're going to pick up today, talking about Samson. So they named their son Samson. And of course, he has to grow up. He's not just automatically a man. So yes, so Samson, the Lord blessed him. And as Samson was growing up, there was something really supernatural about him that the Lord gave him. Samson had a lot of strength. It was like unnatural strength. Like, you know, we all have strength where we can pick up some things. You know, we have limited strength where we can't. But it seems like Samson had like a strength like no other person. The Lord blessed him with the ability to be super strong, basically. So Samson, God sent his spirit upon Samson that he would begin to fight against the Philistines. He would begin to free the people from the oppression of the Philistines. As Samson became as he grew up, we know, of course, yes, he has his strength, but we know it's God working through him, giving him this supernatural strength. And just like the Lord had commanded Samson's mom, his hair could not be cut at all. So his hair was very long and it could not be cut. And some, you know, may say that's because of the strength of his hair. His hair was his strength, right? Yeah. So his parents did exactly what the Lord said, and they told him that he could never cut his hair as well. He had to keep this vow that the Lord had told them not to break. He could not cut his hair. And so Samson made sure never to cut his hair. So we'll just talk about today. So Samson, he is a judge, and he is the one the Lord has chosen to be the one to free the people. But Samson sometimes will allow his distractions to get in the way of what God wants him to do, right? We all have something that we are assigned to do by God. You may know it now, you may not know it now, you'll eventually know it. But a lot of times the enemy will send distractions, meaning things to take us off our focus, because our focus should always be on serving God, advancing his kingdom, and also making sure that his glory is revealed through us. And that's what the Lord wants us to do. But sometimes things will get in our way to try to stop us from doing that, right? You ever like had you focus on, I'm going to do this, and then you easily get distracted and start doing something else, and you're like, oh, I forgot to do this. Yeah. You ever had that happen before, where you're trying to focus on one thing, but then something came and pulled your attention away, right? So that's exactly what we'll see happen to Samson often. Yes, he had the supernatural strength. The Spirit of the Lord was upon him, but Samson sometimes would allow distractions to pull him away from what God wanted him to do. Now, the cool thing, I guess you could say, is that sometimes the Lord would allow these distractions to turn around and work for his glory, right? But we'll see how that eventually will lead to Samson's downfall, with him constantly allowing the distractions to pull him away from purpose. And that's all distractions do. They try to take you away from being effective, from being in purpose, because we're supposed to live our lives in purpose, meaning we're here to do something. God didn't just place us here just to do nothing, right? God placed us on this earth to do something, right? I told you what it was, to make sure his glory is revealed, to advance his kingdom, right? And so the Lord gives us purpose. We all have something. Like I said, you may not know it just yet, but God can show it to you. If you ask him, say, God, why did you put me here on this earth? He'll tell you. Everybody has a reason that God placed them here. We all have a purpose, right? The Bible tells us that he created these works for us to perform way before we were even born. And so Samson, his job, as we saw, God gave him the mission of freeing the people from the Philistines, right? That was his mission. But I told you the distractions will try to pull Samson away from fulfilling the mission that God had given him. So let's get into it. So one day, so now Samson is a man. So Samson went down to the Philistine city of Timnath. So now he's going to a Philistine city. Now, what is he doing over there? You know, but remember, is he supposed to be friends with the Philistines or anything like that? No, he's actually supposed to be doing what? Fighting against them, right? Trying to free his people from them. But anyway, so Samson goes down to this Philistine city, and he saw a young woman, and he said, she is so beautiful. She's a beautiful woman. So when he went back home, he told his mother and father, he says, I went down to the Philistine city of Timnath, and I saw a beautiful woman, and I want to marry this Philistine woman. Now, nothing's wrong with wanting to be married, you know, but is he supposed to be marrying the Philistines? No, Samson, he's not. This is what I'm talking about, right? Distractions, right? He should have been going to the Philistine city to figure out a way to free his people, but yet he sees a woman and he's like, oh, let me go ahead and marry her. Yeah, probably not a good idea, but he tells his parents that he wants to marry her. And so when he tells his parents, you think they're like, yay, yes, get married. No, they're like, Samson, what? You cannot marry those people. Remember, God had told his people not to mix with any other nations. And so they're like, we are forbidden to marry anyone else. Remember, God, that was the whole reason why they're in idolatry now, because they didn't get rid of the people. And so Samson didn't listen to his parents. He says, no, I don't want to marry a Hebrew girl. I want the Philistine woman that I saw in the city of Timnath. That's who I want to marry. And they're like, but Samson, there's so many Hebrew women you could marry. Why would you pick her? There's so many. But Samson, he said, no, I don't want. And so he told his father, he says, go and get her for me. She's the right one for me, and she's the one that I want. So Samson, this is what I was saying. We'll see this a lot, y'all. Just keep that in mind. But anyway, so the thing is, though, the beautiful thing is God can sometimes work his glory, even in a situation where it's like, why are you doing that? God can still turn it around for his glory. He can. That's just how amazing God is. So we think, oh, this is not going to work. But God is like, you know what? Let it work. It's going to be some trouble, but let it work because I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to make it work for my glory. So Samson, he tells his father and mother, he says, I want to marry her. So his parents go and get the woman so that he could marry her, the Philistine woman. So they went to Timnath, his parents, to make arrangements for the wedding so he could marry this Philistine woman. So Samson, he goes after his parents to the city of Timnath so that he could, go to his wedding. So as he's on his way to the city, he's excited. He's like, I'm getting married. Suddenly a young lion comes out of nowhere and starts to roar at Samson. So Samson's like, now, I don't know if you know, but if you run across a lion, I don't think you're going to be like, hey, lion, come see. Right? You're going to be excited. In the wild. I'm not talking about a lion that's in a cage at the zoo. I'm talking about a lion in the wild. Right? So this lion jumps out of nowhere, and Samson already knows this lion is probably hunting. He wants food. And so Samson sees the lion sees Samson. They're looking at each other. And then at that moment, Samson knew he would have to defend himself. So the Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson, and in that power, he attacked the lion. And with his bare hands, when he grabs it, he tears the lion apart.
What?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I just told you how the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. The Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson. Remember, I told you he had this supernatural strength. The Lord would give him this amazing strength, like, superhero type stuff. And so the Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson, and he grabs the lion and tears him apart. What? Like it was like a little bear or something. He just tears the lion apart. He killed the lion that easy, and he's all by himself. This could have been bad, right? The lion could have attacked him and killed him, but instead the Lord gave Samson this supernatural strength, and he, killed the lion with no problem. And so, Samson, this happens, and he just goes about his business like nothing. He's like, yep, I killed that lion. So then he finally gets to Timnath. He gets there. The wedding is set up. Everything is set up, and he ends up marrying this Philistine woman, and his parents go back home to Israel. So sometime later, when Samson is traveling down this same road, he's going back home. This is after his wedding. He sees the dead body of the lion that he killed. And this time they had a beehive that was inside of the lion. The bees made I don't know. They made some swarm of bees. And y'all know inside of a hive, we find honey. Honey? Yeah, they make honey inside of their hive. So inside of the bones, the dead body of this lion, there was a hive that that the bees had made. And of course, we know inside of a hive is honey. So when Samson sees this, he automatically thinks, oh, wow, some honey. Now, The lion is dead, right? The lion is dead. And if you didn't know, remember, Samson is a Nazarite. He can't cut his hair. And one of the other laws of the Nazarite is that they cannot touch dead things. Okay? They cannot. He didn't obey. So guess what Samson does? He sees the honey and he's just thinking about the honey. He's not even thinking about this is a dead animal. So he sees the honey, he sees the hive. He's like, ooh, honey. So he puts his hand and scoops some honey and eats it. So do we see though distraction, right? His Nazarite vow, which his parents told him about, was that he could not touch dead things. He could not eat from dead things, things like that. And Samson, all he's thinking about is, the honey, completely forgetting about his vow to the Lord. And he takes and dips his hand and takes the honey. So he broke his Nazarite vow, but he didn't tell anyone what he did. He knew he wasn't supposed to do that, but he did anyway. Okay. So when he got back with his parents, not only did he eat the honey, but guess what? He gave them some honey to eat. Oh. So, I mean, but the parents didn't know where it came from. He just gave it to them. He just gave it to them. They didn't know where it came from. They didn't even ask. They probably just assumed he just found a beehive somewhere and, not knowing that, no, this came from a dead animal. If they had known where it came from, they knew that there would be trouble for Samson and even them for eating honey from a dead animal, So Samson, this was before birth. God told him this. He could not drink strong drink, couldn't eat things that he shouldn't eat, and he couldn't cut his hair. And we see him breaking his vow. Yes. So Samson, they had a big feast. Remember, he got married. So they have a big feast. They're celebrating. He's happy he married his Philistine wife, right? And so he had about 30 Philistine young men who were his wedding guests. So not only is he marrying a Philistine woman, but then he has friends that are Philistines. What? Yeah. So yeah, I know. So now he's having a feast to celebrate his wedding, and he invites his 30 Philistine friends to come and celebrate with him. So during the celebration, Samson gives them a riddle. He says, I want you guys to solve this riddle, right? I'll give you the answer in 7 days. Solve this riddle. He says, listen. He says, if you solve the riddle, I will give each of you a shirt and a cloak. But if you can't answer the riddle, then you will give me 30 shirts and 30 cloaks. So that was the little arrangement. So he's hanging out with his Philistine friends. He said, okay, I got a riddle for you guys. If you solve the riddle, I'll give you a shirt and a cloak, each of you. But if y'all solve the riddle, meaning you figure out the answer to it, then you'll give me 30 shirts and 30 cloaks. Okay? That's just right? So here's the riddle. They said, okay, let's hear it. He says, out of the eater came something sweet, and out of the strong came something sweet. I'm sorry, out of the eater came something to eat, out of the strong came something sweet. They're like, what? What are you talking about? So the 30 men were puzzled. They were like, okay, out of the eater came something to eat, out of something strong came something. So they couldn't figure it out. They're like, we don't know. So he gave them 7 days to figure it out. And so they're like, what could he be talking about? Or what? What could he be talking about? So 3 days pass and they're like, we don't know. They're like, this is a difficult riddle. This is difficult. And so they knew that if they didn't figure out the riddle, they would have to give him 30 shirts and 30 cloaks. So they're like, we need to figure out a way to figure out this riddle because I don't know. They were like, we can't figure it out. So they go to Samson's bride, his wife, his Philistine wife that he married. They go to her and they says, listen, trick your husband into giving you the answer of the riddle. If you don't, we will burn your house and your father's house. So they said, tell us what Samson's riddle is. So you go to your husband and you tell him to give you the answer and come and tell us. So they threatened the Philistine wife, right, to do that. So hearing this, Samson's wife, Philistine wife, she becomes frightened. And she's like, I don't want to die. I don't want them to burn me and my father or his house. She's like, oh no, I'm gonna figure it out. She said, I'm gonna get the answer for you guys. I'll get the answer for you. So she goes to Samson and she's crying and she's like, you must hate me, Samson. You don't really love me. You gave everybody the riddle and you didn't even tell me the answer. I'm your wife. So she's crying, doing her best to cry, and she's like, please, Samson, tell me. If you love me so much, you're going to tell me what the riddle means. And Samson said, I didn't even tell my mother and father the answer to the riddle. So why should I tell you? And she kept crying and she's like, please, please. And the thing is, every day she kept going back crying, Samson, please tell me the answer, please. I don't know. I need to know, please. She just kept nagging him about it. And so finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He's like, oh, stop with the crying. He says, listen, I will give you the answer to the riddle. He says, what is sweeter than honey? What is stronger? I'm sorry, no. He told her the answer, which was the lion, right? We all know that already, right? Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. We know it's the lion he's talking about with the honey. So she goes and she tells the men exactly the answer. He's like, I've got it. I've got the answer. So now this is her husband, right? And she's supposed to be loyal to her husband, right? She's supposed to honor her husband and not the Philistine, these random men, but instead she chooses to lie to her husband and trick her husband to save herself, basically, right? She's not even worried about Samson. She's worried about herself. So she tells the men the answer to the riddle. So after 7 days, Samson comes and he's just confident that they don't know the answer to the riddle. He's like, they don't know. They don't know the answer to the riddle. So he says, okay, so tell me, what is the answer to my riddle? And they said, what is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? And Samson knew immediately. He says, you tricked my wife. She told you. She told you used her to trick me, and she told you the answer to the riddle. Samson immediately realized what happened. His wife wasn't loyal to him. She tricked him. She lied to him, and she went and told the Philistine men what the answer to the riddle. So Samson was not happy about that. But didn't he want to marry that Philistine woman? Yeah, right? And look, she's not even, loyal to him. She's more loyal to her father and not her dying and all of that instead. Even though Samson had the strength, right? If he had to do anything, he would do it. But anyway, so Samson gets mad. So now he's mad because they figure out the riddle. But wasn't that the agreement? Either he would figure it out or they would figure it out. So instead of Samson keeping his word, Samson gets mad and he goes to a Philistine city. And, he goes in the city and he takes he finds 30 men and takes all of their belongings and brought it all because he was supposed to take a shirt and a cloak. Remember, that's what he told them. He would give them each, the 30 men, a shirt and a cloak. So he goes to this random Philistine city and takes the belongings of these other 30 men, takes it back and gives it to the 30 men that he promised to give it to. And so then in the heat of his anger, Samson left his wife and went back home with his father and mother. So he just left his wife like that. Yeah. So Samson's wife, he left. He just left her because he got so upset. But this goes back to, should he have even married the Philistine woman? No. And look what ends up happening. So Samson gets mad. He leaves and he says, I don't want to marry this woman anymore. So he leaves and he's like, I'm out of here. So he goes back home and he just leaves his wife. And so after some time, when her husband didn't come back, they gave her to someone else. Her father allowed her to marry someone else. And so now she's someone else's wife. She's someone else's wife, right? Yeah. And so Samson has no one to blame but who? Himself, right? He's the one that decided, I want to marry the Philistine woman. And now he's like, oh, let me entertain these Philistine men. And then the riddle didn't go the way that he wanted it to go. Now he's mad. And now he broke a marriage up that he shouldn't have been in the first place. And now look where he is. Plus, he broke his Nazarite vow by eating from the animal, from the lion. Yeah. So Samson, like I told you, he has the strength. The Spirit of the Lord comes upon Samson, but Samson is getting distracted easily, right? And it's taking him out of purpose. It's taking him out of where God wants him to be, focused on freeing the people from the Philistines. Instead, he's making riddles, marrying the women, doing all of that. That's not what God wanted him to do. That's not. And he'll get it. He'll get it eventually. But so now Samson is back with his parents. Marriage didn't work out. He's out of there. He's mad at the Philistines now. And he's like, this is not fair. This is wrong. But no, you were the one that was in the wrong. You should have done what the Lord asked you to do, Samson. So now Samson is back home with his parents, living with his parents, and he has no wife anymore. They gave his wife to someone else. Okay. So next week we'll continue to talk about Samson a little more. Just him and his back and forth with the Philistines and all the drama that they go through. Okay. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So that's our lesson today. Our first lesson on Samson. Okay. All right. So that is it for us today, guys, for Bible.